Good morning. This is my Sunday school class. My mom will not be singing. Of course, every time I say that, my mom wonders, why does he keep saying I won't be singing? Uh, just because this video I did of my mom is still out there and people tune in thinking, oh, it's going to be. But I am teaching the Bible, so please stick around, some of you. We're in the book of Genesis. We're going straight through. We started in Genesis chapter 1 in March of the pandemic, 2020, and we're now in chapter 44. And we just go verse by verse by verse. It's easier to get close to the correct translation of the interpretation of the scriptures. I can't say I'm perfect, but it's easier to get close when you just go verse by verse by verse by verse and look at everything in context of what it says and really read what it says and not being influenced by what you wanted to say or a movie you may have seen but really looking at what does it say. This week I've been struck by the different various commentaries that I have read. Greetings, Jax and Impingo. The various commentaries I've read that really want to make Joseph the hero of the story, and I understand why you want to make Joseph the hero of the story. This is really the story of how the children of Israel ended up in Egypt, which God foresaw. He knew it was going to happen, but didn't have to happen. They didn't have to be slaves for 200 years. Uh, there's a choice that they make to live in Egypt as opposed to living in the actual promised land that God gave them. That's their choice. We'll see how they made that choice. God still turns that around for good. And again, even though God is brilliant and he turns things around for good, it doesn't mean that we should have done everything that we did. It just means God's bigger than us. So if I get drunk and get in a car accident, I should not have done that. But if I go to the hospital and I end up witnessing to the person next to me, I can't say, well, good thing I got drunk and had a car accident. I have to say, look how God is merciful. And even though I did something stupid, he turned it for good. That's what he does. Because he knows in advance, oh, you're going to do that stupid thing. I see you doing it. It's like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. The Bible started out that way, Here's 1,000 trees you can eat of. Here's just one tree. Don't eat this one tree, but see that other 100,000 trees. Have your fun. Oh, well, I know you're going to pick that one tree because something's wrong with you. So when you do, I've already got this plan in place. And that's how God is. Nothing surprises him, and he's able to uh, make up for our mistakes. Thank God. Praise the Lord. So they ended up in Egypt, but that was not God saying, I need you to live in Egypt for 200 years and be slaves because that's the only way I can figure out how to do this. It's your choice. And this is really the story of how that happened. It's not the story of how wonderful Joseph is. So I get frustrated. I'm reading all these commentaries, and they really want to make Joseph the hero. And he's not. Judah is the hero in this story. Just reminding you that when Joseph saw his brothers walk in after they had betrayed him and sold him off to slavery, he was naturally upset with them, naturally, and did not trust him. And that's the whole point of what's going on in the last 2 or 3 chapters. He doesn't trust them. He was so shocked that they abducted him and threw him in a well and sold him off to slavery. He's like, so he doesn't trust them. All the commentators, though, make Joseph out to be this saint, and oh, he's just waiting for them to repent. But they repent immediately. The first time that he threatens them and says, "You're spies, and I'm gonna put you in jail," they immediately say, "Oh, this is all happening to us because of what we did to our brother." They know exactly why. It's all on us. We didn't hear his when he cried out. They're remorseful immediately and blame themselves immediately. Everything changes as soon as Joseph says, which we're still waiting for him to say, hey, I'm Joseph, I'm your brother, and I can help you. And why don't you bring your family here for just a little while and let me help you? And then you guys can all go back home. And isn't this wonderful that God put me in this position? He doesn't say that for a long time. It's Joseph that we're waiting for to change. The brothers changed immediately. The brothers proved that they were sorrowful. It's Joseph we're waiting to realize what's going on and what God wants him to do. And I'm emphasizing this because there are 3 things that prevent Joseph from realizing what he should be doing. And sometimes that's with us. We're in the middle of God's will, but we don't recognize it. We're fighting it. We're trying to subvert it. Like when Paul was supposed to go to Jerusalem and be captured so that they could ship him off to Rome. I mean, that's what he was supposed to do. He fought it and fought it. Once he got to Jerusalem and they captured him, he fought it and appealed his case and kept fighting. And then he finally ends up in prison. And then an angel's waiting for him in prison and says, okay, here's step two. You're supposed to go to Rome. And had he gone to prison, angel's been waiting there for like a week. Like, why won't you show up? Hello. And finally he gets there, and that's when the angel says, okay, now you're supposed to go to Rome. They're going to send you in. Like, oh, why was I fighting? And that's how God is. The angels are around us waiting for us to, hello, you'll get it in a minute. And then we finally go, oh, this is God's will. I was supposed to lose that job, or I was supposed, or this person, I was supposed to hire this person instead of the person I wanted, or I was, oh, well, we ended up with this apartment instead of that one, or we ended up with that car, or whatever. Oh, see how God has this all worked out? I was fighting it. And there's just so many things that we fight, and then we finally have to give in because God wins. We're like Jacob wrestling with the angel. And finally, okay. And God's like, hello, I've got the victory for you here all along. Esau's not about to kill you, Jacob. Calm down. So there's just things we think. So Joseph, we're just waiting for Joseph to wake up. Joseph. Hey, Robert. Okay, and Susan. Okay, sorry. As soon as I put up my scriptures, I won't be able to see who's saying hello. And you don't need to say, no one needs to say hello. I mean, thank you for the people who always do. But if you're watching and you don't say hello, that's fine. So, hello. My wife just said hello because she's watching. Okay, so we're waiting for Joseph to get in, and all the commentators are. So Joseph, okay, but they're wrong. I'm just saying, look at the text. Okay, so let's just. This is all about Joseph, the seed of Abraham. God comes to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. I am going to bless your seed. Which seed? Abraham thinks it's Ishmael. In fact, when the angel comes and says, Sarah's going to conceive, Abraham says, but I already got Ishmael. Can't you just use Ishmael? Like, no, I've got this planned out. Hello. It's going to be Isaac. Okay. Abraham, Isaac. Isaac has two kids, Jacob and Esau. Isaac saying, oh, it's Esau. Esau's the ruddy guy. He's the masculine guy. He's the hunter. If you're going to give this land to anybody, it's going to be Esau. He's ready to bless Esau. And Jacob sneaks in there and gets blessed. Of course, then Jacob lives this whole life. It's called imposter syndrome, where he's thinking, I really shouldn't be here. And he's in fear because he thought he got this blessing because he cheated his way into it. And you can't cheat your way into God's blessings. So, but he thought, see how I manipulated, and then so that made him feel bad. And God's like, yeah, you should feel bad because I already had this under control. When you were in the womb, I've already prophesied that it was going to come through you. You didn't have to lie to your father and you didn't have to do all those things because your father's not in control. I'm in control. That's what God is saying. So it doesn't matter if your father thinks it's the wrong person. Jacob did not learn that lesson. He runs off. He runs into his uncle Laban, and Uncle Laban tricks him into marrying Leah. And Jacob thinks, oh no, that's the wrong person. I really wanted Rachel. And he treats Leah's kids horribly. He has 6 kids. He ignores them. He just keeps saying, oh, but I love Rachel. I love Rachel. Clearly, you can see he makes Joseph a coat. And he ignores Leah, and he treats them and wonders why Reuben sleeps with one of the maids, and Simeon and Levi try to kill. No, they don't try. Kill people. And he like, why are they so bad? I don't understand. Just because I ignored them the whole life and told them they were worthless. And in fact, when my brother Esau came to kill me, at least I thought he was coming to kill me, I put them up front and said, kill them first. And I put Joseph way in the back to make sure everybody knew this is the one I really want to protect. And so, of course, the other kids are thinking, this man does not love us. He loves those other people. I'm mad at him, and I'm mad at anything he loves. So he's shocked when he sent Joseph out, and Joseph suddenly is dead. How did this happen? Because you created a monster. And I'm telling you, Joseph is a monster, but but I'm sure he's a very nice guy. Mary wonder, he's trying to be a nice guy. But he's got monsters in his head, is what I'm trying that God is trying to break because Joseph's a human. He's a human. People threw him in a well. Why would he have trust for them? So there's three strongholds that that Joseph has, that God's breaking. But meanwhile, it's the story of Judah following that line. Like, who's the line? Is it Jacob or Esau? Is it Ishmael or Isaac? It's Isaac. Is it Jacob or Esau? It's Jacob. Is it Joseph or Judah? It's Judah. God's telling the story of Judah. Here's how Judah came into prominence. And what Judah does here is the story. And this is how he came into prominence. This is why the line came through him. And I'm again emphasizing that there weren't magazines and books and television and teachers and public schools. You got your education strictly from your family. Whatever they taught you about the world is what you believed and what you passed on to your children. And God wanted Judah. He said, Judah's the one that's going to pass on a specific thing to the rest of his kids and down the line. And I'm choosing that line to make them an example. So this is a story of what Judah did in the face of horrible circumstances to be chosen by God, not the story of how Joseph got back home, because Joseph never went back home, by the way. He went back home for 2 seconds to bury his father, then ran back to Egypt because that's where he thought he was supposed to be. So I had mentioned that he was stripped of his coat of many colors. He was stripped of the clothes that Potiphar put him on. And now Pharaoh has put on him certain clothes. And Joseph's not taking those clothes off. Okay, so reminding you, last week, three tears, and he's about to cry for the third time. But he's not going to cry till next week because I get right to the crying and then I stop. So reminding you that the first story, he tells himself, I'm in pain, and a lot of us say this, and God is numbing himself to my pain. And of course we believe that. We think, oh, look how horrible this is, or look how terrible the situation is. And we have this solved for it, and God doesn't solve it our way. So we think God is not solving it. Or, he sees it, but he's not moved by the pain I'm in. I'm crying out to him, and God doesn't really care. Because that's what happened to him. He cried out to his brothers, and they ignored him. So in Genesis 4, and that's a stronghold that's be broken. No, God's totally aware of what we're going through and has the solution for it. It's not the solution that we want, but it's the solution that will actually heal us and fix us. So in Genesis 42, 21 through 24, it says, they said to one another, we are truly guilty concerning our brother. This is their repentance when they first got there, because he threatens to put them in prison. Because they say, we've got a brother at home and we've got a father at home, and he doesn't know. Do they really? Because they could both be dead, and they're just saying this to me. I have no idea. Joseph has trust issues, right? So I'll put them in jail and see what they do. So they said to one another, we are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. They actually did hear me. They heard me, and they were moved by it. And God, it actually does, because he tells himself, see, look how I've been in Egypt for 22 years now, nothing. And so, nothing. So God must not hear the anguish of my heart. Or he just wants me to be in this place. And we tell ourselves whatever story we tell ourselves. We look at our lives and, oh man, look how long this has been. Therefore, God has just made a certain decision about me. But he hears that. They heard the anguish, and we would not hear that. Therefore, this distress has come upon us. And Reuben answered, saying, did not I speak to you, saying, don't sin against the boy? Oh man, Reuben was actually on my side. And you would not listen. Therefore, behold, his blood is now required of us. We're in trouble. And so if Joseph was waiting for repentance, he hears it immediately. But they did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter, and he turned himself away from them and wept, because God was breaking this stronghold of they didn't know, they didn't love God. And again, what we go through, we ascribe to God later. We do it unconsciously, subconsciously. We don't realize we're doing. But if you maybe you have like a parent who's very quiet, you go to them and they never talk back. In our minds, that's how God is, because God gave us parents, and he gave us the people around us to help form our opinion of how the world works and how he works. So as children, you go, oh, okay. Well, sometimes you go to God, he just stares at you. So uh, you ascribe that without realizing it. So he's crying, he turned himself away, then he returned to them again, and he talked with them, and he took Simeon, because he told them initially, uh, send one person, and all of you stay. But he thought, no, that person's going to die. What if they all go and just leave one person? And of course, they picked Simeon because Simeon was the instigator. Simeon had instigated the other incident where they killed all of Dinah's boyfriend and all her. So clearly, if they thought if somebody's going to stay, it's going to be Simeon. So he sent them off, and he's thinking, and this is what bothers me by the commentators. He's thinking they're not coming back because they're probably lying. So let me fill their sacks. Let me give them back the money, not so they'll come back and go, oh, it must be Joseph. He wasn't trying to give himself away. Because he could have just given himself away, like he eventually does once the third stronghold is broken. He finally does go, oh, it's me, it's Joseph. No, he's thinking they're not coming back. So I'll give them back their money. I'll fill their sacks. I'll send them on their way, because Benjamin is probably dead and the father is probably dead. So, and then I'll just have Simeon here, and that's too bad on Simeon. So the second time he cried, he says, we believe that God takes away what I love and is going to give me a future I don't want. Somewhere we think God does not really love us. I mean, not that he doesn't love us, but he doesn't really care. He's got a different future for us than what we have. It's like your parents, you want to, I want hamburgers and hot dogs for dinner and ice cream. And your parents are like, no, you're going to have some liver and some greens and some this and some that. And it's like, oh man, I never get to do, I want to go to Disneyland. No, you're going to go to school. I want to sleep in and watch cartoons today. No, you're going to go, And so it's that kind of, my parents or the teacher or the boss has a different plan for my life than what's important to me. And we think that about God. Like, man, I really want this, and this was the thing that's so important to me, but God's just going to give me what he thinks best. And he doesn't really, we don't articulate this, like he doesn't really know me. But somewhere that's what we think, because we know what we wanted and what we loved. And man, I always wanted to do that, and I never got a chance. And God's like, first of all, I put that desire in you. That's why you want to do so much. And I do have that for you. But I'm going to give that back to you in the way that's going to bless you the most and help you the most. So that later you look and go, oh man, I'm so glad I went through all those things, because look where I am now. And I see how it's paid off. I'm able to help in this way, or I'm able to do this or that. That's why God put that desire in me. And that's how he's using me in this situation. But it takes a while to recognize that, because usually we're just bitter, like, okay, I'm stuck in a future that God made up for me, and I'm just stuck in it. Oh, well, I'll just be bitter my whole life. So when he sees Benjamin, he really thinks, oh my God, he's actually alive. He sees him at a distance, but once he brings him over to the house, like, the only thing I loved in this world was Benjamin, and God actually preserved his life, and he weeps because he can't believe that God actually knew his deepest heart and hadn't just stuck it. I'm just taking you to Egypt. Sorry, you'll never be around your family again. You'll never be around. You're just stuck in Egypt. And that's sometimes how we feel. Oh man, I'm just stuck in this job. I'm just stuck in, instead of, no, God put me here for a reason. Our attitude changes our happiness. It doesn't change God's plan for us, because God knows what's best for us. But we can at least enjoy it better if we don't think, oh, I'm stuck. So he's thinking, I'm stuck in Egypt. And look, there's Benjamin. So, of course, he then plots, I'm going to keep Benjamin here with me. So we'll get to that in just a second. But he says, then he lifted up his eyes. He saw his brother in Genesis 43, 29 through 31. Benjamin, his mother's son, he said, is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me? Because he hadn't seen him in 22 years. And he said, God be gracious to you, my son. Now his heart yearned for his brother in that way that you yearn for something that you can't have. Oh, right. And he's weeping because I wanted this. But he talked himself into, I can't reveal myself. It'll spoil everything. So Joseph made haste and sought where he ran out the room, sought somewhere to weep. And he went to his chamber and he cried, oh, because he can't believe it. He's hearing things and seeing things he'd never thought he'd see. I didn't know God would have preserved my Benjamin. And God does. He does preserve your Benjamins. He really does. He knows how much important they are to you because he put the love of it in you. So we have to trust him on that. Now, verse 4 through 31 says, then he washed his face, he came out, he restrained himself and said, serve bread. So he came back outside, he feeds everybody. Excuse me. And in the last couple of verses of Genesis 43, verse 33 and 34, it says, and they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. So he sat them in order. Now, some of them had been born 9 months apart. Some of them had been born at the same time, because Jacob got 2 different wives pregnant at the same time. So some of them were the same age. Like, so how would Joseph know? They were maybe a month apart or a couple weeks apart, but they were born in the same year. And yet he sat them in perfect order. So it says, the men looked in astonishment at one another. How does he know this? He's a witch, right? They just can't. How is he doing this? And then seriously, they're thinking that, and he uses that against them in this coming up chapter. It says, then he took servings to them from before him, but Benjamin's servant was 5 times as much as theirs. So they drank and were merry with him. Now, some commentators have said, well, he's testing them to see, are they going to be upset with Benjamin? Are they going to, first of all, he's just giving him 5 times as much as they think, I may never see this child again. Let me overfeed him. And then, because when they take him away, he's assuming that they hate Benjamin like they hated him. That's it, because why not? His father loved Rachel and he loved the 2 kids, and they tried to kill me. They think I'm dead. So how am I going to protect Benjamin? These are his thoughts. How am I going to protect Benjamin? How am I going to protect? So he gives them like 5 times as much. And they don't, it says they drank and were married with him. They weren't like, no, Benjamin's evil. That's not how they reacted. How dare you give him all that food? That's not how they reacted. Okay, now in Genesis 44. And he commanded the steward of his house, verse 1, say, fill them in sacks with food as much as they can carry and put each man's money in the mouth of a sack. He's sending them away. This is not a test. Fill them up as much as they can carry. That's not how much they paid for. They only paid for this much. They paid for 4 gallons of gas, but you fill up that tank, 15 gallons, whatever it is. Fill them up and give them your money back, right? But put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his grain money. So everybody's going to get as much as they can carry. They're going to get their money back. But I want this cup, because he's thinking, I got to protect Benjamin. He's not thinking, I will test them one last time to see, which is what the commentators say, because they think this is a story about how wonderful Joseph is. This is a story about how Joseph's trying to protect Benjamin because he thinks they're about to kill him, and Judah comes to the rescue. That's what the whole setup is for. What is Judah doing? Because it's his line we're going to follow. It's Rahab the harlot marries into his line, and Ruth is in his line, and all these people, Tamar, they're all in his line. David. We're following Judah's family for the rest of the Bible, all the way through to Jesus. So God knows that he's the subject of the story. Anyway, so it's what did Judah do? So as soon as the morning dawned, the men were sent away, they and their donkeys. They don't know they have money, and they don't know Benjamin has this cup. And when they had gone out of the city and were not yet afar off, Joseph said to his steward, now get up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, why have you repaid evil for good? Is not this one from which my Lord drinks? Is not this the one from which when you find the cup, right? This is the one from which my Lord drinks, with which he indeed practices divination. You have done evil in so doing. Now, in the Egyptian culture, they believed in reading the tea leaves and all that. So they would, in their cups, they would throw in gold leaves and stuff into their drinks or in their fountains, and they would look and say, oh, look, I threw mud in there and it has the face of Jesus. They wouldn't say that, but they would see in it, right? And that's how they would divine things. That's how they would, they would read the tea leaves, right? And so this cup is from which I practice divination, because that's what they did in Egypt. Joseph didn't practice divination. Joseph's just lying, but he knows that the brothers know about Egyptian culture. So he's saying, oh no, that's the very cup from which he, so go and accuse them and say, why would you take this cup? You have done evil in so doing. So steward overtakes them, this very same steward who put the money in the sacks, and the cup in the sack, and knows they didn't take it. But it's like, okay, Joseph's going up to one of his tricks again. So he overtook them. He spoke to them these same words, right? And they said to him, why does my Lord say these words? Far be it from us that your servants to do such a thing. Like, we paid, and why are you saying we? Because they haven't searched the sacks yet or anything, right? He's just accusing them. You stole from us. Why would your servants do such a thing? Look, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money which we found in the mouth of our sacks. We brought back the money with us. We could have said, oh, what money? We brought that back. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? With whomever your servant it is found, let him die, and we also will be my Lord's slaves. So whichever one of us has it, or whoever, let that person die, and we'll be your Lord's slave. Now they're being pretty bold. If you find it, that's when people say, may God strike me down if I'm lying. They're just putting it out there. And so whoever took it, they can die, and the rest of us will be slaves. And they're bold like this for a reason. They'd seen their father Jacob do the exact thing, and even though he was guilty, he didn't realize he was guilty. That he stood up that way. They were 18, 17, 16. No, they were in their, one was 21, 20, 19. They were men when Jacob stood up this way. If you recall back in Genesis 31:3, when Jacob had gone up and he's staying with Laban, and he'd been there now 21 years. Married one wife for 7 years, other wife for 7 years, and he'd stayed 7 more years. And God had really blessed him. Then the Lord said to Jacob in Genesis 31:3, return to the land of your fathers and to your family, and I will be with you. That's all he says, just return. He didn't say, get out of here right now, run! He just says, return, and I'll be with you. So Jacob goes and tells his wife the story, and he says, in 31:13, he says, he told me, I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar and where you made a vow to me. He didn't say all of that, but this is Jacob embellishing. Now arise, get out of this land and return to the land of your family. So Leah and Rachel, all of them says, okay, we'll go. So they all get up and go. In Genesis 31:20, it says, and Jacob stole away unknown to Laban, the Syrian, in that he did not tell him that he intended to flee. So he bunked out. He got out of there and didn't tell Laban. Now, God didn't say, and don't tell it. Because if God is telling you to do something, you don't have to lie about it. You don't have to trick something. If God is doing it, he knows people are crazy. So he didn't. There are times God may have said, steal away in the middle of the night. That's not what he said here. This is just Jacob's choice, because Jacob is always afraid somebody's going to get him. That's why he left home. Esau's going to kill me. I'm in trouble. That's why he's leaving home now. He's thinking away from Laban. Laban's going to come after me. He's going to, and so he didn't tell him. And Laban does run after him because he doesn't know what's happened. His daughters are gone. His grandchildren are gone. All his flocks are gone. Like, what's going on? So he chases, and somebody's taking his idols. And that's now. Rachel took his idols. Now each of the wives, Rachel, Leah, and their 2 maidservants, had little foreign gods because that was part of their culture. But Rachel took her father's idols because she just thought, well, they've got more power. They're bigger. They're not, and just in case. So she has not totally bought into this culture of there's only one God. But Jacob didn't know that. Jacob wasn't part of that culture. So he doesn't know that they've taken anything. So when Laban catches up with him in Genesis 31:29, it says, it is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night saying, be careful that you speak to Jacob, neither good nor bad. Like, don't go off on Jacob. And God's able to do that. So that's why dude didn't have to flee. God would have gone to Laban and in a dream and said, I am the God and do not kill this man. And he did that with the pharaohs when, gave them dreams and said, I'm going to kill you because you're sleeping with Abraham's wife. I didn't know it was Abraham's wife. And he didn't know. So God, it's okay. It's okay. We don't have to be as deceptive. God can speak to people's hearts. So he spoke to him But he says now in verse 30 of Genesis 31, you have surely gone because you greatly long for your father's house. I get it. You haven't been home in 22 years. But why did you steal my gods? Then Jacob answered and said to Laban, well, first, because I was afraid. That's why I snuck off, not because I just longed for my father's house. I was afraid, for I said, perhaps you would take your daughters from me by force. So that's why I snuck off. But with whomever you find your gods, do not let him live. And everyone's lined up there. All the kids, they're all there. They hear Jacob saying, whoever took it, do not let this person live. In the presence of our brethren, identify what I have of yours and just take it with you. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them, right? So these men saw how Jacob stood up to Laban when they were all scared. Because trust me, Jacob was scared and didn't know how not to act scared. So his kids were very aware, scary man is here because look how my father's all panicked. But he sees the father stand up and say, whoever has it, let that man die, right? And then so they search all over. Rachel has hidden his father's idols and put them in the saddles of her horse or donkey. And then she's sitting on the donkey and she tells her father, remember, she says, I would get up, but I'm on my period right now. And so he's thinking, I know she's not sitting bleeding on my idol, so I'm not even asking her to get up. Well, and he was right because she was lying. So he never does find his idols. Even though he was right, someone had stolen them. But in Genesis 31, verse 35, it says, then Jacob was angry and rebuked Laban. So he's like, see, I told you. And his sons get to see this. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my trespass? What is my sin that you've so hotly pursued me? Although you searched all my things, what part of your household things have you found? Nothing. See it here before my brethren and your brethren, that they may judge between us both. So set it here. Oh, I'm sorry. Set it here. If you found anything, just set it here in front of everybody because they're all out there. Everybody's there. So the kids see their father stand up in this way. So they have no problem, however many years later, this is like 50 years later or something like that. They have no problem. Joseph's like 17. Actually, because Joseph's about 7. Oh, no, they go to Shechem. Well, anyway, so maybe 30 years later, standing up to Joseph's men that he sent out there and saying, whoever has it, you just check him. And God repeats these stories because he's showing us how these things are passed down from generation to generation. He does it on purpose. Okay, and so this is where they got it from. So the steward says back to them in Genesis 44:10. So I'm back to when the steward has caught the sons. So they said, well, let it be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my slave, and you shall be blameless. So the rest of you get to go, but whoever I find it with, they got to stay and be my slave. Then each man speedily let down his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack. So he searched, and he began with the oldest, but he already knew because he knew where he placed it. But he began with the oldest, and he left off with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and each man loaded his donkey and returned to the city. Tearing their clothes is a way of showing this deep sorrow in your heart. You cannot see my heart, so I'm going to rip my clothes so that you know how ripped up I feel on the inside. This happened when in Genesis chapter 37, verse 29, when Reuben thought he had rescued Joseph and said, "Oh, put him in the pit, and when I come, and then I'll go away for a little while while you're sleeping." He's thinking, while you're all sleeping, I'll come back to and rescue Joseph out of the pit. So it says, then Reuben returned to the pit, and indeed Joseph was not in the pit. And he tore his clothes, and he returned to his brothers and said, the lad is no more, and where shall I go? I can't go back home because Dad's going to kill me because he put him, take care of your brother, and now he's gone. And he tore his clothes. In Genesis 37:34, when they come home with the news, and they hand him this bloody coat, when they hand the dad, Jacob, this bloody coat, and they don't say anything, they just hand him a bloody coat. Then Jacob tore his clothes and put sackcloth on his waist and mourned his son for many days. Oh, he's dead, and I can't believe it. right? So they trick him just like he tricked his dad, because that's what they learned, and they knew what he had done. They knew what Jacob had done. They're like, why are we staying here with Uncle Laban? Why aren't we back home with your brother? And well, he's mad at me, blah, 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 you know. So they knew what he had done, and they learned from him. Oh, we'll do the same thing. But that tearing of clothes, right? That's the cultural tradition of the Israelites, and probably in the Middle East, not just the Jews. But so it's like, oh no, Benjamin. Now it's in his sack, so they probably think, Lord, Benjamin stole that cup. However, in Genesis 44, verse 14, it says, Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, and he was still there, and they fell before him on the ground. Now they're on the ground. So this is like the dream being fulfilled. When I saw your corn stalks bowing to mine, right? And Joseph said to them, what deed is it that you have done? Did you not know that such a man as I can certainly practice divination? And he's playing that whole thing up because he accidentally sat them in order, and they're like, how did he know? He's like, I can do divination. So why would you do this? Didn't you know that I practice divination? Like he's playing up, since I screwed up, let me just play this up. And you know, I know who did what. However, then Judah said, what shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? And he's the only one that speaks up. This is why he was ultimately chosen. Of 12 brothers, he's the one that's going to teach his children the right thing. Or how shall we clear ourselves? He says, God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Here we are, my Lord's slaves. It's like, this happened because we're sinners. This is, God has found out the iniquity. You know, and so here we are. We're all going to be your slaves. And he's not, no one, he doesn't say, hey, you're right, take Benjamin, because something wrong with that boy. If they did not like Benjamin, this was certainly their chance to leave him and say, yeah, I'm sorry, we'll take Simeon back. And because they left Simeon, and this is what Joseph is thinking. They had no problem leaving Simeon, and they may never come back. Remember, when they went back home, he says, don't you come back unless you have Benjamin. And then they didn't show up for a while. So he thought, well, they must not have Benjamin because they didn't come right back. In fact, that's what they told their dad. They said, we should have gone right back. It's now been a while, and now we're going to show up with somebody that he's going to think we're pretending it's Benjamin. So, and they're thinking, this man's never seen Benjamin. How is he going to know if it's Benjamin or not? So, uh, so they weren't planning on coming back. They had left Simeon. So he's thinking, they'll just leave Benjamin. They'll just leave him. And then I can protect him. Oh, because they're going to kill him. Because that's what he's thinking. He's not thinking some pure thought. I just want to test them. No, he wants his brother because he thinks when I turned his age, that's when they tried to kill me. So let me get him away from them. But Judah says, this happened because God has found out our iniquity. When did he learn this? When did Judah become this person? Because he was not this person before. In Genesis 42, it says, they said to one another, we are truly guilty, 42:21, concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. So when we threw him in the well, he's pleading, please, 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 and we just ignored him. In fact, it was Judah who said in Genesis 37:26, so Judah said to his brothers, what profit is there if we kill our brothers and conceal his blood? Like, that's stupid. We're going to get in trouble if we kill him. So he says, come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, because they'll send him off to slavery and then he'll die, and then it won't be on us. And let not our hand be upon him, for he's our brother in our flesh, and his brothers listen. So, because the law that had been established under Noah is like, you cannot take another man's life. So we don't want to get in trouble with God. We'll just ship him off and let those people kill him, and then it's not on us. So this is who Judah was. Judah wasn't this, no, let's save him. But he changed because of Genesis chapter 38, which all the commentators say, we don't know why this is in the, how could you not know why? It's the story of Judah. So in Judah and Tamar, remember how he promised when his first son turned 18, and this happened in the 22 years in between when they sent Joseph off and when they showed up in Egypt. He says he immediately left and he went down and he gets a wife of the Canaanites, and they have a kid immediately. Then they have another kid immediately, and they have another kid right after that. They had 3 in a row. And when the first one is 18, he promises with Tamar. but the Bible said he was evil, so God killed him. The second one turns 18, so now the older one would have been 19, and she marries him, and he refuses to give her kids because the kids would get the inheritance. So because he's evil, he dies. So the next one is about to turn 18. So now it's been 20 years, right? It would have been 2019, 18. And he forgets, Jacob forgets to give him to the wife to him. And then another goes by 21 years, and then another year goes 22 years, like at nothing. So that's when she dresses like a harlot, and Judah sneaks off and goes into the harlot. Doesn't think anybody will ever know, but she says, "You don't have to pay me, but give me your ring and give me your." Then he comes back later for his ring, and she's gone. And people go, "What? There ain't no whole setting up here. You better check down in Hoover because ain't nothing here in Figueroa." And so he's like, "Oh well, I lost my ring." So like he's done, right? But it came to pass in Genesis 38, verse 24, it says, "It came to pass after 3 months after that Judah was told, saying, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the harlot, and furthermore, she was with child by harlotry. So your daughter-in-law is pregnant." What? So Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned." And he's very self-righteous, right? How could she have done this horrible thing? Because he didn't think anybody knows about what he did. So when she was brought out, she sent to her father-in-law saying, "By the man to whose these belong, I'm with you." If you want to know who did it, because they always wanted to take the woman caught in adultery and stone her, but wasn't there a guy with her? And so they're ready to burn her. And he says, "Well, here's the man. Hello. There was a man involved that got me pregnant. It was not a miracle birth. That's coming up later." And so he looks at it. He looks at the ring, and said to his father-in-law, "By the man who these belong, I'm with child." So she said, "Please determine whose these are: the signet, the cord, and the staff." So Judah looked at them and said, "Oh, that's my stuff. She has been more righteous than I." He says what he says to Joseph: "God has found out the iniquity of your servant." Because God will blow. You can bury your Egyptians like Moses did. Moses killed those people when he was 40, before he went out into the wilderness. And then he tried to bury them in the sand. And the next day, the winds blew. Mysteriously, the wind blew the sand off his Egyptian. God sent that wind. And people came up to Joseph and Moses and said, "You're going to kill us like you did that Egyptian?" And Moses was like, "Oh, let me get out of here." And so God's not trying to hide our sins. And so he learned then, wow, God will expose you, because I thought I'd snuck off to this harlot, and here she is in front of everybody with my stuff. So he says, "She's been more righteous than I. I had this self-righteousness, like I'm so incredible. But look at me, I'm a sinner." And God broke him right there. And he was quick to say, I didn't give it to Sheila, my son. I messed up. And he never knew her again, of course, because that wasn't his intention. He thought it was just some harlot. But from that union, she has 2 kids, and one of his name is Perez. And from that line, with Tamar, and it comes the Messiah. So, but no one knows that yet, right? So Judah's got sons of his own. Joseph has sons of Manasseh and Ephraim. And they probably had daughters too, but the culture at that time didn't include women unless they had to, unless God forced them. Okay, we'll write about these women who are doing all these heroic things, like Rahab and all these other who were saving cities, and Ruth who were saving people. Okay, if you force us to. But they were writing about the guys mostly. So he says to them, "Here we are, my Lord's faith. God has exposed our sins," because that's what he had learned. God will expose what's going on, and this is, we're in the crux of the situation. Like if God's going eeny meeny miny, but he's not, because he already knows. But he's showing us, here's why I picked Judah, and here's why I did not pick Joseph. Okay, so both we and he also, with whom the cup was found. So we're all going to be slaves. We and he also, with whom the cup was found. So Judah's saying, we're all going to stay. We're all going to be slaves. We're all in trouble. He's not pointing the finger at Joseph. I mean, at Benjamin. And he could have because it was found in Benjamin's sack. But he says, okay. But that's what kind of heart Judah had. Reuben didn't say nothing. Simeon's just glad to be out of, let me keep my mouth shut because I just got out of prison. But no one says anything but Judah. Now, Joseph says, but he said, far be it from me that I should do so, like make you all slaves. The man in whose hand the cup was found, he shall be my slave. And as for you, go up to peace to your father. So his goal is to keep Benjamin. That's why I gave you your money back. That's why I put all that stuff in your sack. You guys can leave. I read commentaries who say, well, he's trying to see if they're going to stick up for Ben. They are sticking up for him. Joseph's not putting, first of all, it's not Joseph's job. It's not our job to put somebody else to the test to see how righteous they are. So if he thought that was his job, he's wrong. God's the one who looks at our hearts. But that's not his intention. He wants them to leave. He's not trying to see. Because they've already said, we'll all stay. And he's like, no, don't stay. Get out. Let me keep Ben, because he's the one who's I found the cup. Because he's just trying to, he still does not trust his brothers. He still doesn't trust them. When Benjamin gets back, they're going to kill him. Because I was pure and wonderful, and look what they did to me. And that's what he thinks. Like, because remember, every time he tells his stories, you were bowing down to me. You were licking my feet. Isn't that wonderful? And it says they hated him, could not speak peaceably to him. They wanted to kill him. He had no idea. Right. So he's thinking, I was wonderful, and look what you did to me. So even though you're showing all this love to Benjamin, you're probably going to sell him off to slavery. So let him stay here. So this is about Joseph not trusting them. It's not about them being repentant, because they are. They're immediately saying, we'll all stay. It's not, it's the story of Judah, and this, God's looking at this moment. And so next week we'll get into what Judah said in response to this, because he's saying, all of you leave, just leave Benjamin, and we're good. Goodbye. And next week, he will read Judah's answer, and this is the moment how he responds and how Joseph responds, and said that where God went, okay, and I'm showing you this so that you'll see why he's coming from this line. This is the preferred line. Okay, so thank you for listening in. Turns out I am preaching again today at my church. If you go to Good Shepherd MBC LA, Missionary Baptist Church LA, on Facebook at 11 o'clock. Well, I'll probably get up to about 11:10, 11:15. But we are in the book of Joshua. So I'm in the book of Genesis on Sunday school. Once a month I preach in my church, and we're going through the book of Joshua. Now in Joshua chapter 4. And on Wednesdays, we are in the book of John. We're still in the first chapter of John. So anytime you can listen in, all these are on our website, goodshepherdmbcla.com. They're on the Facebook page, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen in. Okay, so I will see some of you. I won't see any of you because I can't see through internet. Why am I keep saying that? But I'll talk to some of you again later today, and then others I'll see you either on Wednesday or next Sunday. All right, God bless.